Hello and welcome to another geopolitical analysis video. Please like, subscribe, and share the video posted today as we explore 50 years of eco-apocalyptic narratives. We hear about climate change. Bill Gates is the one evangelizing his book, How the World is Changing, and how we need to take abruptly these measures to cut down on consumption, transportation, and even narrow our carbon footprint. Whatever that means, for most people, it seems that carbon is a very essential gas, and for some, it seems to be a very threatening uh, gas element that we are emitting because we're consuming too much stuff. It's not the private jets that these world elites and the World Economic Forum members use to travel from point A to point B, but it is us for purchasing too many couches, too much stuff, and that we are the ones to blame. Moving on, let's take a look. 2014, French foreign minister says 500 days to avoid climate chaos. Laurent Fabius was invited to the State Department in Washington. Foreign Minister spoke with Secretary of State John Kerry, and he was evangelizing this whole narrative of 500 days before climate chaos. Well, that happened in September 2015. We're still standing, and we're doing actually pretty well. Going back a few years now, 2013, Arctic ice-free by 2016. U.S. Navy predicts summer ice-free Arctic by 2016. This is an article that was published, I believe, by The Guardian, yes. And, of course, they were talking about the U.S. naval passages that will be happening in the Arctic, and essentially all that ice will melt, and God knows what bacteria with it. Well, Arctic is still strong, it's still solid from what I hear. Not only that, there are also a lot of methane catastrophes that were attached to the Arctic free fall, and a lot of problems we're going to be created in the next few years. Nothing of that sort has happened. The Arctic is still doing very well. The caps are present. 2009. Well, polar ice cap may disappear by summer 2014. Who said that? Al Gore. Al Gore again. 2019. So we see this whole Gore propaganda didn't stop when he failed in 2008 with all of his fraudulent data and all of his predictions that, of course, didn't come true. Moving back to 2009, Prince Charles. From all the people, Prince Charles says we only have 8 years to save the planet. 8 years. We care so much about the planet. I mean, me and the lovely monarchy here in England, very concerned about the world, what's going to happen. Our gold spoons might not be that gold anymore. Our silver spoons might not be that silver anymore. We might have to send money to prepare, save the world. Garbage. Again, garbage. All of the people who do not have any scientific basis, who do not have any background, any proof, are just yapping away narratives that the media so delightfully regurgitate, and us, common folk, digest and fear for our lives. Of course, 2008, we had, surprise, surprise, Al Gore. His infamous speech about 2013 Arctic, that everything is going to melt, and inconveniently, it's still there. I mean, he warned that the entire North Polar ice cap will disappear in 5 years. It's still there, and it's doing fine. Since 2008, it's been, 14 years? Moving back, The Guardian, 2004, Britain to have Siberian climate by 2020. Who? Britain to have Siberian climate. Anyways, looking at 2002, Famine in 10 years. Another Guardian article. Why vegans were right all along. And of course, on the left, you can see Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I mean, Bill Gates has been pushing this agenda of climate uh, change for such a long time. In the millennia, they spoke about the children won't know what snow is because we're going into a world heat wave, and snow will disappear in our lives. This was an article from The Independent, and yes, ridiculous. Now again, 1995 to present, climate model failure. All those climate models that they've used have failed. All these observations have failed. And you know what? Not to tire you folks, I want to go a few decades back to show you how this coordinated agenda has been working with all these so-called, you know, experts, all these scientists who really do care about the world, and we're seeing that this agenda affects the economy. Some people profit from this. Some people rush to buy certain commodities, certain products, and back then, especially in the 60s and the 70s, which I will read some articles from you, they didn't have quantitative printing. They weren't printing money to cause inflation. So the consumption, the perception of people was dire in order to move the needle. And that's why the media would push on this agenda. Like, take a load of this. 1967, dire famine by 1975. Look at that. The accuracy. In 8 years, there will be a dire famine. Huge famine. And this is supposedly a Stanford University biologist, Paul Ulrich, who is saying that the U.S. will suffer from a dire famine. 1969, everyone will disappear in a cloud of blue steam by 1989, talking about the pollution foe. The trouble with almost all environmental problems stems from pollution. Now, 1970, ice age by 2000. So in 30 years, we're going to be living in an ice age. Scientists predict a new ice age by 21st century. The Boston Globe, April 16th, 1970. Can you imagine? Air pollution may obliterate the sun and cause a new ice age. Obliterate the sun? How can air pollution obliterate the sun? Like, this is a scientist who is saying that air pollution will obliterate the sun. How is that possible? Anyways, like, ridiculous. I mean, the Greeks knew that we lived in a heliocentric universe and that the sun was in charge, not air pollution destroying the sun. This is ridiculous. 1970 again, America subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. Again, this Dr. Paul Ehrlich, he sounds like one of the Nazi scientists that escaped, probably one of the progenies of the eugenicists who made over with the Operation Paperclip in the U.S. 1971, new ice age is coming. U.S. scientist sees new ice age, etc., etc. Washington Post. Moving on, Brown University. This paper, right? We have from the Department of Geological Sciences, 1972, new ice age by 2070. Oh my God, can you imagine the accuracy here? So they're predicting that in about 100 years, there's going to be ice age. I mean, all these predictions failed. How can you go forward by 100 years? This is crazy. We're in the twilight zone. Like, reading these old articles show you, again, my point is that this whole climate discussion that we hear in the media is a bunch of fabricated bullshit that these scientists and all these politicians who follow this agenda in order to re-engineer our society, to change the way how we live, to control more and more our consumption, our perception, the way how we transport, to limit and stifle the growth. Because Every single article I'm looking at, and feel free to take a look at, is proposing to put more restraints on who? Not the politicians, not the elites of the world, not those who fly in private jets, but you, the consumer, the average consumer, the person who pays his taxes and is a law-abiding citizen. Again, 1974, another ice age, ozone depletion, a great peril to life, etc., etc. Antarctic ozone, whole area, problematic. The cooling. In 1976, the cooling. There's a famous article. And Stephen Snyder, climatologist, he pushed this narrative again. Acid rain in 1980. They were talking about acid rain for several years. How acid rain is going to destroy the oceans, turn it into Lake Erie, which is dead. And 1978, no end in sight. 30-year cooling trend. NASA satellite data said there was always a slight warming trend since 1979. Miami News, regional drought in the 90s. Prepare for long, hot summers. Threat to the islands. So you see, the 80s, the late 80s, had an intense narrative of hot summers, hot climate. So we moved on. We left the Ice Age, which coincidentally was predicting in the 2000s, early 2000, up to 2070, that we will be living in an Ice Age. But what happens is after a few years, public deception. People have forgotten about it, and now they're following the next narrative. What is the next propaganda? I mean, it just goes on and on. My point, again, is that we need to disregard this whole climate change discussion. It's fabrication. The Earth changes, is a large organism, and we're on it. Whether it's man-made, whether it's not, the evidence is not stacking. Our predictions, our models have been wrong over the last 50 years. So this geological apocalyptic catastrophes are not manifesting because, again, it's all about changing the perception of the average folk. And obviously the human race has created a lot of catastrophes. We've damaged the Earth. But the Earth, again, can repair itself a million times over. It has done so. The Earth is billions of years old. Our species is definitely not that old. So when it comes to that, we need to always put a reference. Climate change, referencing what? Over the last 5,000 years? Probably, yeah. 10,000 years BC? When was the latest ice age that was recorded? So we need to stop this whole discussion that I'm seeing about climate change and all these evangelists and all these people proposing us to do things and shaming others for consuming or driving non-electric car vehicles is ridiculous, because I've literally showed you, 20, 30 articles of all these eco-apocalyptic narratives that never came through. And all of them had data, had analysis, had some personal remarks on why they think it will happen. Doctors, scientists, politicians, you name it. So don't fall into this trap of climate change. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video posted today. Thanks.